Okay, this is the transmission for the 1955, and this is the last anybody's going to see of it, hopefully for another 65 years. Got the crank in there, new crank bearings on there. I can't say I see a lot of wear on it. There's a little bit of wear on some of these gears here, but could be that somebody that had it was maybe having trouble shifting gears. Has to be set with this notch being straight up and down. This is neutral notch here. You know, there's a little clicker detent fits in this thing with a spring and a little it's a little cam action on this thing that puts this transmission cam in the right position, and this larger groove is the one for neutral here, and that makes it so the gears are in neutral. But is a little bit of wear in some of the gears. I'm not sure. I know when I moved this shaft in and out, it has a little bit of play in it. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be like that or not. Everything seems right as far as the way it's put together, but you know, you never know about something like this because I don't know. Somebody else took it apart before me, and I'm not sure what they did to it. But the trick to getting them together is you've got to get these shifter forks inside the cam, so that's in that groove there, and I usually put together with this stack of gears. I put that in first where the clutch is on the end of that shaft. That goes in first, and then I stack up these gears and offer up this shaft, the output shaft, and slide it right through all the gears. You can check with your finger from underneath here to see if you got them right. But the reason I have to put this in is I got to get these gears onto this, on the forks, on the shifter forks here, and this shaft fits in there. It'll locate for you, but that's about the last thing I do is put the shaft in there. So you got plenty of play to work with until you put that shaft in there, and so I slide that down in there, this slider shaft last. But anyways, I got her back together now, so I think everything will work correctly, or at least as good as it did when the last guy had it anyways. And like I say, I'm not the first one to go in here, and I'm not sure what he did to it, but it seems like all the spacers and everything are right, what he's got in there, from what I can see in the manual. So if there's infloat on these shafts or something, it's probably the way it's always been, or the way the last guy left it. If he lost some parts or something, it's something I can't tell anything about. But anyways, and of course this piece is ready to put on there. New seal even on the clutch here. This is for the speedometer. You have to get that position just right, and even then you'll probably have to jiggle it. I set this gear here in a certain position where, like say if I set it so where this gear, one tooth is pointing this way, because it's going to engage on this, then with this thing, when I go to put it on there, I have to have this gap in this gear there, and even then you got to kind of jiggle it around a little bit. I suppose I could put something in the end here and maybe twist this gear back and forth as I'm putting it together, but yeah, anyways, I cleaned out the passages here. There's one down in there, a little tiny one, and made sure that's all been sprayed out with carburetor cleaner, and so the oil gets there. But yeah, I think it's ready to put together now. I didn't really find any real high spots, except again where the pins are. That gets distorted a little bit, but basically it's pretty flat, so I don't think I'll have any leakage problems there anyway. So it's pretty much ready to put together. One thing I noticed that some people that aren't machinists don't understand is these case halves are matched. A lot of the parts on this, such as milling off this surface here where the cylinders go on and things like that, are done with the cases bolted together when this case is made. In this case, I think the people over in At Puch, we're very smart because they put match marks on here. They've got 264 and 264, so everybody knows these two case halves match. Those are what they call match marks, and this is a pair. And you can't just buy one half of a case. You have to buy the whole thing. Otherwise, things aren't going to fit properly at all, because they were machined with the cases bolted together, and that's when they did it. Now, after it was machined and everything, I'm putting this thing back together, and I've got both case halves match and everything, but I wanted to put in these dowel pins that go in these holes here. So first I drew after I put the cases together on top of you have to make sure that the speedometer gear is lined up. I lined up the output shaft gear tooth and the speedometer drive gear, and then you got to kind of wiggle it around a little bit until it drops down on there. And then I put all the bolts in and draw the things down so the cases come together, you know, with my gasket stuff in there and everything. But when I draw it down together, then I back off all the screws, all these retaining screws that are drawing the case halves together, so that they're loose by half a turn or so. They're not completely tight. I want those loose on purpose so that I can drive in this dowel pin. That's the thing you got to put in before you tighten these screws, because these dowels are what precisely align everything, and those dowel pins were in there when these two match mark cases were made. So those dowel pins are real important to put those in, and then tighten the screws, because the screw holes won't necessarily line everything up. It'll be close, but it really should have the dowel pins put in first, then tighten down the case screws, and kind of cross tighten of course, and work your way around as you draw that down on there, and then you can see that the crankshaft turns. It's maybe a little snug in there yet. I think they tell you to just give a rap on the end of the shaft if it's a little tight. I read that in the book somewhere, that you just give that a little rap to, you know, kind of seat the bearing. Something in there has got a little bit of a bind on it, but it turns plenty good enough. I don't think I'll have any problem with that. And this shaft, I noticed, doesn't have any play. Now, when I took it apart, this thing had 15,000-20,000 slop. And I don't know what I did or why it's tight now. That I don't understand. Whether I don't think I put in any parts it didn't have before, but it seems like it fits better now. So that's a good thing, I guess. But maybe the new bearings helped. I don't know. I can't tell you why that is. Some things I don't understand. Right now I'm putting the goop on here. This is some paint remover, like zip strip you put on here to get this gasket shellac or whatever it is they put on there. I want to clean that off and get this surface real nice and cleaned up and smooth for when the cylinders bolt on. So I'm working on that. Anyways, the cases are together. I've got the transmission in neutral, so you know, when I turn this shaft, nothing happens. So it's about time to put the primary drive on there. Probably be the next thing I'll do, and the clutch and so forth. That has to go on there yet. But first thing is clean this up.